Latin America Working Group actually started as a response to U.S. policy in Central America and focused on bringing together faith-based groups, human rights groups, grassroots organizations in the United States in an effort to change U.S. policy to support peace and human rights in Central America. Since then, we expanded to take on other kinds of Latin America issues, and we try to bring the different organizations together to advocate effectively for U.S. policies towards Latin America that support peace, human rights, sustainable development, and social justice.
The travel ban came into effect around the same time that the embargo came into effect. The embargo and the travel ban are both part of a trade sanctions policy towards Cuba that began in 1961 and was further developed in 1963 and has continued and actually been tightened at times and relaxed at times. Relaxed in the late 70s under Carter, tightened again in the 80s, and tightened up a bunch in the mid-90s, and then again in the early 2000s. And the travel ban is really interesting because today is the only travel ban in the United States that restricts U.S. citizen travel to a country. So a U.S. citizen can travel to North Korea, U.S. citizen can travel to Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, anything you can imagine, but they can't travel to Cuba. Which doesn't make much sense if the goal is to restrict money going into the hands of a regime. Not to say that there aren't issues with the political system in Cuba. It's counterintuitive. If with Vietnam or with any other country that we had previous conflicts with or current conflicts, the idea of exchange was supported and encouraged to try to have some type of opening and dialogue. And with Cuba, it's not that.
It's such an archaic policy that's out of step with every other aspect of U.S. policy to the region, and it's a symbol of a real Cold War approach that is something that should have changed long ago, and that organizations want to see change.
Just general people-to-people exchanges help to form friendships, and that's really what's needed beyond sort of official channels of diplomacy, is getting to know people. And today, after an executive order a year or a year and a half ago, Cuban Americans are able to travel to Cuba, which makes sense. They have the most intense connections with Cuba because it's family. But yet there's something missing there, both from the U.S. side, sort of preferential treatment for a specific group of citizens in the United States, and also for those in Cuba that don't have immediate family in the United States. They don't get to interact and exchange. It's what some folks that we work with like to say it's low-hanging fruit, in that it would be a big gesture without much cost, but at the same time it doesn't rise to the top. There's legislation in the House and the Senate that would lift the travel ban entirely. And so the way that we're really engaging citizens is to get their members of Congress involved and on board. There's a sense that this issue belongs only to a particular group, Cuban Americans or Cuban exiles, and that's not the case. The entire country wants to see the change, and citizens need to be vocal about it and let them know that this issue doesn't belong to Miami. This issue belongs to the entire country. Last month, the legislation passed through the Agricultural Committee because it has 2 agricultural provisions in it that would facilitate sale of agricultural products of the U.S. towards Cuba, and the end of the travel ban. And it passed through the Agricultural Committee, which was a huge step, and is now sitting in the Foreign Affairs Committee, which is going to be a challenge for the proponents of this change. But realistic, certainly there's a chance of it winning. And then I think on the floor of the House, there's now an understanding by members of Congress and the entire country that the momentum has shifted and that people do want change, and not the country U.S. citizens in general want to see that change. And Cuban Americans overwhelmingly support lifting the travel ban. And I think legislators are starting to see that. So I think on the House floor it could certainly pass. And in the Senate, if a bill got to the Senate, we're certain that bill to end the travel ban would pass.